And do you want me to start notifying people? Some add everyone's. Yeah. The audio sounds terrible on the stream, by the way. Something's wrong. There's like two things playing at once. I think you just have the same. Oh, there you go. Yeah. Our sound is coming through the stream though, so what's up, everybody?
Well, howdy. I don't know what was going on with the BGM there, but we'll figure it out. Welcome to the 2024 preseason podcast. I'm Steven. I'm joined by Isaac, former president of CU Flying Buffs, and our host for RMNA 2024. How are you doing, Isaac? Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me now, Isaac? Test, test, test. Isaac, can you hear me, Isaac? Can you hear me, Isaac? Hello? First stream glitches, man.
How are you, man? I'm doing good. If the stream would finally
cooperate, I think I would be doing a little bit better.
But
But welcome finally to the 2024 RoboMaster preseason podcast. I'm Steven. This is Isaac, former president of CU and our host for the 2024 RMNA. Isaac, are you excited?
Oh boy, am I excited. I don't have the words.
It's going to be so much fun. I think we've got a record-breaking number of teams coming, right? It's like 20, almost 30, right? It's like close to 30. It's like 27, 26? 27 teams. Dude, it's crazy how much RMNA has grown over the last 4 years. You've had basically going from like 10 teams in 2021 to now triple that. Crazy. But let's get on to tonight's episode 1. We're going to be talking about RoboMaster, the competition moving forward in 2024, the different changes that have been implemented. They haven't, re-implemented the rail sentry, thank goodness. But they have made some changes. I know some teams really like the rail sentry, so we'll see how that turns out. But they have made some changes to the rules and how the robots level. So like some of the more in-game mechanics. And speaking as a former president and team lead, you can tell us how hard is it to make those changes and adjust when it's like you're just finding out about them at the beginning of the year.
Yeah. I think the thing is that the studio connection and this season connection, like, or the so the system functions, I think when it's talking about what's happening in the game, they have discussions, and they get an update after they've already started, maybe tells them how they're doing. That was a big thing here when we got changed to the sales company. We had a full design ready. That approach is more so you get with some assumptions and then when things change, you tweak a few small things, but for the reason you're operating.
Yeah, they try to keep things a little bit similar for the most part, but it's definitely one of those things where it's like you have to make a change on the fly and just roll with the punches. I know that Tamu, when they found out about it, it was like they had this whole idea planned out for how they were going to like make changes to the sentry on the rail, and then surprise, it's a ground robot. But tonight we'll just be going through the rules, doing a deep dive into that, and let's go ahead and look at what we've got planned for our next episode. So moving forward, tonight just RoboMaster North America, but then the month of May, we're going to be doing team interviews, and we've got a lot of teams lined up. I won't say who we've got lined up just yet. Want to kind of keep that a surprise. But next week, we're going to be having one of our new teams, our brand new first-year RMNA teams, joining us, and they'll be kicking off the interviews, and I'm really excited about that. Are you quiet? Let me try turning you up a little bit. Hold on. Try saying something now. Is that better? Can you all hear him better now?
Yeah, I think I've seen the lineup. I'm gonna play one, but that's very exciting.
It's gonna be fun, and
From the team, what I've heard from people so far, I think they're like the best. Or
yeah, and I think this year is going to be like one of our strongest years as far as new or like younger teams. I think there's going to be a massive improvement because, you know, in previous years, it's always, you've had your top tier teams, your upper echelon, but then you've kind of had the, is it still messed up? Okay, let me see if I can figure that out. Hold on. Keep talking, Isaac. You take over. I'll try to adjust your audio.
I don't know if they can hear me. Yeah. Interesting thing that if we're going to do some music for the future, I think the most interesting thing is going to expect to see from these upcoming episodes is going to be robot reviews at the very end. I don't think that's spoilers to say. There's some robot reviews on the stream when that comes out. And so I'm very excited for that because I want to see what the robots look like. I don't think anyone can hear what I'm saying. Unfortunately.
They're saying you sound like you're still underneath like a fishbowl or something.
Well, I just unmuted the stream on my own computer just to hear what it sounds like, and I can hear you talk, but I can't hear you talk. Yeah.
We're talking now. Let me see if that fixes it.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Oh, that did fix it. Amazing.
Okay, finally. First stream jitters, everyone. Thank you for sitting with us as we figure this out. We promise that we're going to get this all locked down by next episode. But, you know, first time back. It's been a year. We're a little rusty. I'm sure you can understand.
I get to show off my Arizona now.
Finally.
Not
Yeah,
sponsored.
We're not sponsored. That would be an awesome sponsorship. Like, idea for next year, Arizona tea sponsorship.
Oh, yeah. I'm in.
That would be great. All right. Well, now that we can properly hear you, what do you say that we go get into the new changes and some of the overview of the competition this year?
Yeah, let's give a rundown of the rules.
Awesome. Alrighty. Well, as you know, it's gonna be pretty much the same. But for all of our new viewers out there, we want to go ahead and give you kind of just an explanation of what RoboMaster is and how it works. And even for some of our experienced team, I know there's often confusion on, you know, how do you gain levels, or what prioritization do you want to take, or even sometimes how do you shoot your gun after you die? Because that was a nice little adjustment that they made that one year when they were like, oh, surprise, you have to go unlock your gun after you die. And everyone was wondering why they couldn't shoot. But let's go ahead and move into the battlefield. So, as you know, there are two competitions in RoboMaster NA, the 1v1 and the 3v3. Isaac, you've commentated the 3v3 plenty of times. Tell us a little bit about the battlefield and some of the changes that you've noticed.
Sure. So the 3v3 field is a pretty interesting one because it's RMUL, because it's supposed to be sort of a regional local competition. The main point about the 3v3 battlefield is that it's a flat field. So it's super easy for host venues to set up. They just kind of put down a floor. And that's the defining feature that separates the 3v3 battlefield from the Chinese battlefield, the 7v7 battlefield that requires different levels. But what they've done this year is they've added a little bit of height in the form of speed bumps. So on the entrance and the exit to the team's bases, which is where their sort of home object is, the thing that they're trying to protect, and also the place that they start, there is a speed bump. And so teams can no longer build robots that are super low to the ground or don't have suspension. There's a much bigger incentive to build robots that are closer to the 7v7 style robots. Instead of building purpose-built 3v3 robots, you now at least have to clear a little bit of a speed bump. And so that's one of the biggest changes, actually, because it drastically changes the way teams design robots. They can't be as specific to 3v3 anymore in that regard. Now, I will say an interesting thing.
That, don't you? Because CU's, it feels like every time that CU tries to build something into their robots, it just like gets nerfed by RMOC.
It's 3 times in a row. Yeah, it's happened. But that's just because we have crazy people on our team, like myself and others. I'm not going to exclude myself.
Who forward thinking.
Come up with stupid ideas, right? And I think a lot of other teams also have similar ideas in the same years. And so, yeah, I'd say that the yes, it is probably a direct response to teams in general. That's kind of how RM works. Just actually some context for chat. There are other RMUL competitions around the world, so it's not just NA. There are other competitions that run the exact same format, and so there's also some feedback and changes based on that have come into play.
Right. I mean, RMNA didn't exist but 4 years ago, so we're still a very young region comparatively. So oftentimes I feel like, we're trying to catch up to those Chinese teams, try to match that curve, but I feel like we're starting to get there, if just a little bit. We're getting close, at least. But in addition to the 3v3 field, you've also got the 1v1 field, which is what I'm a personal fan of, because I love the 1v1. Mainly, I'll be honest, it's because I get to talk to all the new teams, some of the smaller teams, and they are awesome, and I've made such great relationships with them. But it's a little bit simpler. You can see it's just a square arena. You've got 2 barricades in the middle. The robots start on opposite ends, and it's just a death match. And they will go at each other, and it is action-packed. It is crazy. But I often found that oftentimes there's a lot more driver skill involved in the 1v1 than necessarily in the 3v3. Because when the 3v3, you can hide behind the barriers a little bit more. You can strategize out. But with the 1v1, there's not a whole lot to hide behind. And you can't really develop a strategy other than peek a corner, then hop back in that corner, right? So, I mean, you tell me, because you've driven before in RMNA. So what's like the differences that like you face between the 1v1 and the 3v3?
Yeah, I think, well, obviously the 3v3 is a lot bigger, so it's about the size of a tennis court, just for a rough size comparison, which means that to get from end to end of the 3v3 field, it takes a lot of time. Now this year, an interesting thing about the 3v3 field that I will add is that the reload zone, which is the space where you can get health and also pick up ammo, has doubled in size. It's now 1 meter by 2 meter, and you can fit 2 robots in there instead of one robot. And that's very interesting because obviously in 1v1 you only have 1 robot. In 3v3 you have to worry about collisions with other robots and collisions with yourself, especially in your blind spot. That's one of the biggest differences between 1v1 and 3v3. On the 1v1 field, you can see on the diagram there are a few blocks in the center of the field to add some obstacles. The actual physical thing is not fully blocking. It is like a full wall, but because the robots have lights and they have height and complexity, even if a robot's behind a wall, you can still tell, the driver can still tell exactly where the robot is behind that wall. So it's not like you don't know where the other robot is at all times. You always know where the other robot is at all times in the 1v1 field. Whereas on 3v3, you have no idea where most of the other robots are, including your own. And remember, one of them is autonomous in 3v3, so you have to, if your autonomous robot has the capability to move, or even tries to move, unintentionally moves, you can hit it. and so you just have to be careful about collisions on 3v3 where you don't have to do that in 1v1.
Well, we've seen it when teams are trying to reload. You got one robot reloading, but another robot is like getting chased by the enemy team and needs to heal, and it's like you're trying to get into that little resupply zone, and you're stuck because your teammates reloading or they're healing up, and you can't get in there. So it'll be very interesting to see how teams make use of that, or if like I don't know, maybe teams will like mark off like part of it. All right, this is just for that sentry, and to try to minimize those collisions, like you said. So it'll be very interesting to see. There's going to be interesting changes with the reload zone, the resupply zone, and the new speed bumps over the base. So I'm excited to see how it goes on. But moving on, let's talk about the actual real stars of the competition, the robots themselves. And you know that it's going to be so cool to see so many different teams developing so many different robots that there's always such variety, I feel like, in the design that different teams take, right? You have some teams that, like, you can tell they have a clear idea of, like, we're going to prioritize mobility. And then you have other teams that I think, like UIUC, like 2022, right? Their standard was, like, just above, like, the height for the 1v1 barricades, like you mentioned. So it's like they could always watch to see where their opponent was. So it was, like, just so cool to see the different ideas that come through, right? And mainly, I think the standards are the most diverse, but obviously there is something to be said for the hero and the sentry. And so let's go ahead and talk about those.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about actually, you pick one. We'll alternate. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Let's start with the sentry, since it's the most interesting one. All right. So yeah, go over to the sentry. So the sentry is one of the 4 different types of robots that teams can build. Now they can only field 3 robots at a time, and there are rules about what you can mix, like how you can mix and match these robots. But the sentry is great because it's always on the field. So there's a reserved slot on the 3v3 fields just for the sentry. If teams decide not to build a sentry, then they just don't have a 3rd robot on their team. And so it's critically important to have one. The other reason why it's critically important is because it's by far the strongest robot. As you can see by the diagram, it has 2 shooters, and it uses the smaller armor plates. So basically just a quick rundown for the way RoboMaster works if anybody's completely new. The robots, most of the robots have a way to shoot some projectile, so whether that be little paintball-sized plastic pellets or golf balls. The robots each have a shooter, at least one shooter. And their targets are these little squares that are mounted to each robot called armor plates. So you can see at the bottom of these robots on the diagram, there's the little black square with a symbol or a letter on it, or a number, and it has 2 vertical lights. That's the armor plate. So you only can really make an impact if you hit those armor plates. Hitting anything else on a robot doesn't do anything besides cause maybe a little bit of physical damage, but teams will, push against the physical damage with their own designs, and they'll make sure their robots don't actually take physical damage. So RoboMaster is less about a combat bot competition, and it's more of a tactical competition. The idea is when you hit your shots on an armor plate, you do virtual damage to the robot. So the robots all have a system mounted on them called the referee system. The referee system is just a piece of tech that gives the robots the ability to track how much health they have, are they staying within the rules of the game. There's a lot of different small things that it tracks about the robots, but it's basically making sure they stay legal, and it's also facilitating the actual combat of the game. And so, yeah, the Sentry is unique because it gets 2 shooters while also using the smallest style of armor plate. So some of the armor plates are rectangular. You can see on the right, the hero has a big rectangular armor plate. The one on the left, the Sentry has small armor plates. So they're really small targets, they're harder to hit, and it has 2 of them. Additionally, the game gives it a lot of buffs. So it's allowed to shoot a lot faster, fire a lot more ammo, and it doesn't have like any of the restrictions the other robots have. It's pretty much has free reign. Right. So you think, okay, this robot's super important, right? should be a no-brainer. But you know, most teams never have a working sentry. It's very, very rare to see a working sentry, and the simple reason why is because it's fully autonomous. And this year, that
because
really
it's
means
so hard.
fully.
Right, because it's so hard to calibrate both those. Like you said, it's like you see in the illustration, right? There's 2 turrets. But I think a lot of teams, they try to simplify it. And I know like Tamu in the past has done, just a single turret with 2 barrels, right? Because it is so hard just computationally to have 2 cameras, 2 turrets locking on to potentially independent targets. I think UW is the only team that's done a double-headed sentry in RMNA. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you've got basically this super complex robot that is so crucial and can be a huge buff if you can get it right. But like you said, it is so hard to get that sentry right. There's a reason we've seen very few sentry kills in RMNA's history, right? Because it is so hard to get this robot toned in, right? Honed in just perfectly. And unlike some of the driver controlled robots being the hero and the standard, you can't, strategize. And unless you have really great CV, in addition to really great pathing and a really good plan strategized out for your sentry, it's hard to get any type of kills with the sentry. It's hard just to look at a robot, right? I mean, I think last year we had several sentries shooting at the banners on the wall because it was just that was what they had calibrated their cameras to. It was like that certain like color shade, and so they were pointing at the cameras and shooting at, I think it was Preston and Matt while they were up there commentating. And so it's one of the more difficult, I'd say it's the most difficult robot to really get just functioning, right? But then
if you want some anecdotal evidence of that, our sentry last year, when it shot, when it killed its first robot, it didn't kill it by killing it through RoboMaster. It killed it by killing the on switch. It shot the on switch and turned the robot off. So that's more common than actual sentry kills.
New strat. Like, we should go back and count how many deaths have occurred due to power off instead of actual damage to the robot itself. That would be very interesting. Well, let's move on to the main robot, that being the standard. And there are 2 types of standards. You got your regular standard and your balancing standard, right? And I think we're gonna have probably close to 4 or 5 balancing standards this year at RMNA. It's gonna be crazy. But the regular standard is basically the workhorse of the competition, I would say. It's going to be your one that's going to be going around getting those kills, trying to eliminate the other robots. Whereas the hero, that's going to be your more big base damage dealer, right? And especially in the 1v1 competition, you are only allowed to use a standard robot. There is no hero, there is no sentry. It's just the standard versus a standard. And so that's where, that driver skill and that design really comes into big play, because there's nothing separating you. It's like you can't have, your hero pulling and carrying you through the game by just rushing through the base at all. You got to have a good standard locked in. And, there's different types of standards. I've seen, a couple swerve standards, but mainly I think a few mechanism standards. But the standard, they're going to be just your first line of defense, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, the standard, I mean, people call it the bread and butter, right? So you got to get it right. Like you said, balancing is a cooler, more interesting, and more powerful robot, but it's also a risk. And so I think that's probably one of the coolest dynamics for people to watch out for, is look for the balancing standards and look to see if they work. Because if they work, they're going to destroy the other standard on the other team. And that's just, a pretty clear win overall.
We saw it last
cases.
year with Produce balancing standard was giving lots of teams just fits because it was so accurate and the teams couldn't get around to its free armor panel. So I would say, obviously, the big difference between a balancing standard and a regular standard is you have 2 armor panels on the balancing standard versus 4 armor panels on the regular standard. But the other big difference is just some of the stats that you get. You get increased stats with the balancing standard because it's a harder robot to build and it's a harder robot to manufacture and get operational. So you get those buffs. And especially at those early levels, the balancing standard is an absolute nightmare to go up against.
Yeah, I think the balancing standard, if it works well, the team has a working balancing standard, they win the standard v standard duel. And so watch out for that. But yeah, I think another thing that's interesting and is worth mentioning is that these diagrams show robots that, you know, are a great example of what things might look like. But most teams' robots will look nothing like these. And in fact, they'll look nothing like each other's. So yeah, it could be sometimes hard to figure out which robot you're even looking at in the first place. This diagram makes it very clear. Oh, that one's the standard, that one's the hero. But yeah, I think another maybe tip for people watching RMNA, since this is sort of like leading up to RMNA, is if you like a team, if you're a fan of a team, you might want to go to their website, go to their social media, and try and like learn what their robots look like beforehand, because otherwise you will have no idea in a match.
I know that
there's a lot of teams that will try to find out what other teams' robots look like just for strategic advantage too, right? I mean, it's helpful when you're in that competition to know, all right, UW, they've got this dual-headed sentry, Purdue, they've got this bouncing standard, and you need to plan for that sometimes. But I think it's going to be interesting to see if we can get maybe a balancing on a balancing standard competition. I don't think we've ever had two balancing standards go up against each other. Because before it was only Purdue and Torino, Polytechnico di Torino, that had two balancing standards, and they've I don't think ever faced each other. But this year, I'm hoping to see a balancing versus a balancing standard. I think that would be really cool.
That would be awesome. I want to see that too.
That'd be great. Let's keep going on with the competition though, because we're already halfway through, and there's so much information to cover. Win criteria. I know that this is something that would seem really simple, right? It's like, oh, it's just a simple point-and-click video game, right? But we've seen so many teams in years past lose close matches because they didn't quite understand the win criteria, and it is so critical that you understand it, I think. So we're gonna go over the win criteria for both. Let's talk about the 1v1 first. 1v1, it's a deathmatch, like I said. You've got one standard versus one standard locked in the arena, and you gotta go out and just try to kill the other standard as fast as possible. So the first criteria for victory is destruction of your enemy robot. And then after the destruction of the enemy robot, you go down to remaining robot HP. And then after remaining robot HP, this one's very interesting. You go to the weight. And Isaac, I don't know if you knew this, but last year, we had a match in the 1v1 standard competition that went to the weight decider. It went all the way through. Both teams were fighting it out, and they were chipping at each other's damage, and then the time ran out, and we had to go to the robot weight. So we had to pull out their inspection sheets, look at which one weighed more, and the one that weighed less was the one that won. And I don't think we've ever had that before, but it was so bizarre, this little thing that you wouldn't think ever comes into play, but we actually had a decision made based on robot weight.
Yeah, I've had that happen to me before. It happens all the time, especially when RMNA was new. A lot of teams would go a whole match without hitting a single shot on each other, and so obviously that would result in when neither team has died and they have the same HP, then whichever one's lighter wins. But you also have to remember that it only takes 20 hits. It's 200 health. It only takes 20 hits to kill a robot in 1v1. That's not a lot, right? Like, technically, if you just made it a random sample, which it's not, but let's just say it's like a kind of random distribution of hits, there's a 5% chance two teams have the same HP, right? Like, you play 20 games on average, you're going to get one where two teams have the same HP. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens more than once next year. You'll see it happen. And so this is another thing. Teams do care about this. I can tell you, being inside a team and talking to designers of other robots, people really care that their robots are light.
You talk about like material choice, right? I think CU is like the main component of like using carbon fiber, right, in all their robots. And their robots are
that, but yeah.
You won't claim that. We've seen your robots from last year. They were all carbon fiber. You don't have to be modest about it. Y'all were rocking that carbon fiber robot squad. It was awesome. Don't lie about it. But because of that, your robots were ridiculously light. And you've got other teams that use a lot of sheet metal. Sometimes they use some 3D printed plastic on the robot. Those materials weigh a lot more. And when it comes down to these like decisions in these super close matches, it's like that could be the deciding factor.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely could be. And I think the most sort of pressing matter when it comes to designing your robots so that they're light is that teams love to basically take something that's there and like borderline break it to make it lighter. And that sounds very vague, but like here's a few examples. Classic example: you take a beam, like a piece of box tube, a beam that's inside the robot, structurally important, and you drill holes in it, right? And you drill holes to make sure it's sort of strong enough, but it's not, it's not gonna break, but it's still significantly lighter. Also, electronics I've seen a lot actually get destroyed if you buy something off the shelf, electronics or otherwise. You can take it apart and make it a lot lighter at the risk of maybe it breaks later down the line. But teams do that all the time. And so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like the push to make things lighter causes robot failures in matches, and you won't know. There's no way to know while you're watching it, and that's why the robot didn't work. But especially for 1v1, a lot of teams, I think maybe Steven, you should talk about this. Teams build robots specifically for 1v1, and so there's some interesting dynamics there where they design it purposefully to be lighter.
Right. I mean, I think it's so easy to try to do everything all at once, but we've seen so many teams get suckered into that. It's like they try to make sure the robot can do this thing, this thing. But then they get to competition and the robot just doesn't work at all, right? And so, props to those teams that only do the 1v1. It's like you're focusing in on that one thing, and if you can do it really well, if you do that one thing just really well, you stand a good chance of making it very far in the competition, I think. But let's move on to the 3v3 win criteria, because that one's a little bit more complicated, I think. And especially this year when we've got so many 3v3 teams, I think it's going to be very important to really know how this is going to go down. So 3v3 competition, similar starting out with as the 1v1. You're working on destruction, but this time you're trying to destroy the enemy base, right? And the enemy base this year, it's a 2,000 health, correct me if I'm wrong? I think it's 2,000 health, right? We'll figure that out. But you've got the base health, and then you're going to the base HP. So if neither team destroys the other enemy's base, then you're going on. Excuse me. Which team has more base health, right? Which is going to be very critical to understand because those Tostitos I had earlier kind of tripped me up again, man. I think I'm good now. I'm going to drink some water. But you've got base health, but bases have an overshield, which is not part of the win criteria. And so you've got teams that they maybe are thinking that they advanced the win criteria when it's like, hey, you still got some overshield to shoot through, right? And the overshield, I believe, is 1,000 health, I believe, as well. 1,000 HP. Yeah, 1,000 HP. Okay. So my cumulative added up. I was there in the total. It just added up.
Yeah. Well, it's 3,000 total.
Right.
Right. And so if you actually, there's an important dynamic here that's important to consider. The hero, which is the one that shoots the golf balls, that does double damage to the base. So normally the hero does 100 damage, but when it's shooting the base, it does 200 damage per hit. But the other robots, they have a 50% nerf. Or I guess 100%, no, 50% nerf, sorry, on their shots. So usually they do 10 damage, but when they're hitting the base, their hits only do 5 damage. And from a practical standpoint, this is very significant. The smaller robots, anything but the hero, does not really do much damage to the base. It's, teams will still shoot at the base with those robots so that they can win on that base HP, separator win condition, but you're not gonna kill the base with just a small robot or with just a robot that shoots 17s unless it spends the majority of its efforts shooting the base. So you need the hero to kill the base. It's very important. Another thing that's very important to note is that like you said, there's 1500 health and 1500 overshield. Doing damage to the shield does not affect your win condition at all. So if you do, there's 1500 shield health. If you do 1499 damage to the shield, which is a lot, that is a lot of damage. That takes a lot of effort to do. You are in no better position than if you had done nothing to the shield.
And we've seen teams that have fielded two standards to try to do damage, but it is just so hard to chew through like 1500 health in addition to the overshield. And you're right. Unless you have a good hero, and we've seen good heroes. I'm thinking the VT hero specifically, just absolutely run through a base and its overshield in record time, right? So I think it'll be interesting this year to see how teams prioritize the hero versus the sentry versus the standard, because we've seen, over the years, the meta change a little bit. But I don't want to get too far ahead of us and talking meta discussions, because I think we'll save that for maybe a later episode when we're talking and looking at the actual team robots when they reveal them. But after the base health, you then go on to sentry HP, which is very important, because we've seen teams in years past even.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Just because your mic is echoing a little bit, so you should mute yourself in OBS. Yeah, mute your mic in OBS. I'll talk for a second while you do that, and then we'll go back to it. So yeah, no, the 3v3 settings, basically, if I'm gonna boil it down as quickly as possible, I would say the most important thing of this list that you see on the screen is gonna be sentry HP, because teams are not gonna get through the shield, and a lot of times teams don't end up killing a robot and unlocking the base to be shot in the first place, which is the important part. You also have to kill the sentry to get rid of that overshield in the first place. There will be occurrences where teams destroy the enemy base and win on base HP, but the vast majority of wins are usually on sentry HP. And so that's the thing to watch out for. It may be surprising for first-time viewers, but look at the sentry's health during the match, because that is the most important stat, and that's really what teams are going for to get their win condition.
We've seen it, in matches, the sentry be the deciding factor. And you've seen base races, teams try to chew through the base as opposed to just do damage. They could be trailing the sentry by 50 damage. And then they go for the base. And it's like, if you would just, chip down that sentry instead of trying to chew through that base overshield, then you would win. So I think prioritizing your win conditions is going to be very, very important. But you can see the next win condition right after that is attack damage. And I don't think we've ever gone to attack damage. Well, actually, I think, I'd have to look it up, but I think maybe we did in 2021. It was Camu versus UW. I think they went to attack damage.
We just got a subscriber.
Ah, awesome.
Miss NWK. Thank you.
Miss NWK. Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to try to be coming back every week. Leaning. Oh my goodness. Okay. I'm so sorry, guys, about the echo. I promise we are trying to work these out real time, but I promise if you just suffer through it with us this week, we'll have this all worked out by next week. And Isaac, I know that you're not going to be here next week, so unfortunately, we won't get to hear your beautiful voice. I think we maybe figured it out. Did we figure it out? Can they hear you all right?
I think I fixed it on my end. Okay, should we move on to the next section maybe?
Oh, perfect, yes. So really quick, total robot HP. Yeah, after attack damage, it goes to total robot HP. However many robots are alive, what's their health? That's how you decide who wins. But I think we do need to try to pick this up a little bit. So let's go ahead and move on. Let me bring us back. All right, let's talk about the competition layout, because there was some confusion last year. Not necessarily with this first part, but with the second part, and we'll get to that. The group stage. So the way it works, you're going to have a lot of teams, and they're going to be divided into 4 groups. Group A, Group B, Group C, and Group D, right? And you're going to have anywhere from 5 to 6, maybe 7 teams in your group, depending on how many teams show up to the competition. We'll get that sorted out at the competition. But the important thing is that only the top 2 teams from each group will move on to the knockout stage. And I think another important part that we have yet to determine is seeding, right? will the top teams from last year be placed in different groups? That's been kind of something that we've done in years past, but this year we don't really know if we're going to be doing that, right? And so it'll be very interesting to see, I think, if we don't do, seeding and distributing the top teams, if maybe you have, say, UW and TAMU in the same group, I think that would be a nightmare, right? I mean, you tell me, Isaac, would you like to see like the top teams going at it in groups, or would you kind of prefer to wait for them to fight in the bracket stage?
My personal opinion is that they should be spread out because, that makes it more interesting and is more, I guess, equitable for all the teams that are spending their time going out. But I could see it going either way. I think it's a valid discussion to have.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I will say, though, that's very interesting this year is with 27 teams in the 1v1 bracket, there's always 4 groups. That's a fixed number. So there's 6 or 7 teams per group in 1v1. That's a lot of teams.
That's a lot of matches, too. Each team, because each team plays everyone else in their group is the key thing.
Oh, boy. I'm struggling to make time in the schedule for that.
You've got, like 7 teams in each group, 6 teams in each group. You're playing 5 matches just to get out of group stage?
Yeah. But that also means that they're playing a lot of matches each, which is great. But also, like, it's going to be a huge wave of just, like, everyone's gone except the top 8 teams out of these 27 once once all is said and done. So, like, pretty much nobody statistically, well, not nobody, but, like, very few teams will actually make it to the final round, right? Most teams are not going to be able to play an elimination bracket
and each year we've seen the challenge of getting thank you Tom, thank you so much. We've seen in just sequentially year after year, it's harder and harder to get to that breakout stage, that knockout stage, right? And every team wants to win, obviously, but just to get to the knockout stage, especially this year, that's gonna be just an accomplishment on its own, I think. But let's talk about the bracket stage, because that's where things get a little bit fuzzy, right? So the way that it works is your top 8 teams, they move on. And they move on to a double elimination bracket with some slight changes. So you can see on the far left, you've got your gray numbers. Those are your match numbers, right? You've got match 1, match 2, match 3, match 4. And then you've got your seeding. I don't think we seed the bracket stage necessarily. We'll have to see as we get closer to comp, but you've got the first 4 matches. So your top 8 teams will play each other. And then your losers will go down to your losers bracket. So they're not eliminated just yet, but the losers will play, and then the winner will move on, and the team from the winners bracket, they will play, and the losers will come down. So you can see the loser of match 8 will play in match 10, and the loser of match 7 will play in match 9, right? And then here's where it gets interesting, because the double elimination goes away. Those teams, the winners from match 10 and match 9, will go on to play the winners from match 7 and match 8 in matches 11 and 12, right? And I know we're starting to jump around and it's getting confusing. Just stay with me, I promise. It'll make sense, kind of. And so then the losers of that one will play in the 3rd place final, and the winners will play in the grand final. And I know this was very interesting last year because you had TAMU, who was looking like a really strong contender, have some issues in their semifinal match against NUS, and they lost. Just one match, they lost, but then they had to go to the 3rd place finals to play VT. And NUS, who had worked their way up through the losers bracket, got to play in the grand finals against UW. So it is very critical in the bracket stage that you win every single game. You can't afford it. It's like, don't let the double elimination lull you into a false sense of security, right? Because every match counts in the bracket stage. You can't afford to throw even one match, I think. And you can speak.
Tough climb back to the finals.
It is so tough to climb out of the bracket stage. If you lose one match, and even if you're in the winners bracket, you're not guaranteed to move on to the grand finals, right? So it's going to be interesting this year, as you said, because we've got so many teams. You're really going to see the best of the best teams moving on to that bracket stage this year, and it's going to be a dogfight to get through it. And so this year, I think, is going to be one of the most competitive ones that we've had.
Absolutely, it will be. The great thing about this too is that we get an explicit 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th place because of that 3rd, 4th tiebreaker match. So we get to say, mostly in a bracket tournament, you say 5th through 8th, right? Because the 5th through the 8th teams are the ones who all get eliminated at the same time, and you can't really tell the difference. Well, now, because we have both a double elimination where teams are kind of getting eliminated in tiers, and then also this tiebreaker match, we can actually specifically rank the teams pretty much all the way down the order to determine, what ranking they are compared to the others in terms of, bracket results. So that's pretty cool.
Right.
And it gives us another great opportunity to basically have a really intense, but like less stressful match in the 3rd, 4th tiebreaker, because both teams know they can't win the tournament. They're already out. So it's kind of just like for the joy of having a 3rd place match. So that's always my favorite match of the whole tournament, to be honest.
I mean,
Third, fourth
my
tiebreaker.
favorite match was the 4th match last year, right? It was Tamu versus VT. It was best of 5, and we went 4 rounds. I don't think we've gone 4 rounds I think maybe we did in 2021, the first year, but that was an intense match. Either team could have won it, and I think, those matches where it's like you've got nothing to lose, you're just playing for the fun of it, those are the most fun and entertaining, right? Because you've got the teams, like, they're just having fun at that point. Let's move on. I think we're starting to run a little bit short on time, so let's move on. Talk about the levels, and this is where the big changes come in, because oh boy, did they make a change to the leveling system this year. And I can see you've got that smile on your face. You know what I'm talking about. But let's go ahead and switch over there. We are talking.
This is a great change. This is amazing. The 3 levels thing, it didn't make much sense because most teams would be stuck at level 1, maybe get to level 2. Now it's so interesting because it's almost continuous. Like, teams will get up from level 1 to level 3 and 4. I've done the math on this very fast. It's going to be very, very quick to get up to those like first few levels. And then, there's some interesting dynamics. You can gain XP now by shooting. You just shoot. You don't even have to hit anything. You just shoot, at a wall, and you'll level up. Obviously, it costs you in-game currency to do that. It's not free to just level up. But you can level up in so many different ways now. It's impossible to track. You cannot really track how teams are leveling up. All you can do is look at the number and be like, oh, great, they're leveling up faster than the other team. And it's critically important. You really have to level up fast to win. And so teams that have thought about it and really know how to level up the fastest are going to outsmart teams that might have better robots than them. It's going to happen. I'm very confident of that. Apparently they cannot hear you talking. But so I will talk for you for now until I can hear you in the stream. What we were saying is just that the levels obviously very unique this year, very new. I think the coolest thing to focus on if you are looking at these tables is just the first one and the last one. Thank you, Steven, for highlighting which one is which. That's great. You'll notice that teams can pick which path they want. So there's a few different rows where they can go power focused or HP focused, for example, on this standard chassis. And so yeah, they can choose between a few options. And the great part about that is that there's strategy involved, and the other team doesn't really know what you picked. And so it's a bit of a back and forth game on that one. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say on that front other than wow, what a great idea. I had never thought of this as like a proposed rule change even, and it's once it came out, I was like, wow, that's genius. This is super great, and it's gonna make matches really interesting. So while you're watching matches, watch the XP. You can see on the stream, on the live stream, you'll see every single robot's level, a number 1 through 10. The Sentry doesn't have it. The Sentry is basically at level 15 as soon as the match starts, which is part of why it's so freaking insane. But you know, the other robots, they level up, so watch them, and you'll notice that the robots are going to move faster, shoot faster, and be more effective when they're higher level.
I mean, I think that's. Can you hear me now, Isaac? Or am I still quiet?
We can hear you on the stream.
I have no idea what's going on, man. I am not changing these settings. They're just operating on their own. I have no clue what's going on. But thank you for explaining all that so succinctly. I mean, it's going to be so interesting this year with these leveling changes to see. I think someone in chat mentioned it's like the different preferences of like barrel cooling, the cooling focus barrel versus, you know, the power and HP versus the, you know, health focused chassis builds. There's so many different variations and so many different combinations that you can think of with these levels and with the way that you earn XP, that you're going to see a lot more diversity in how teams decide to go through their matches, progressively building their robot and what they're specking into, you know, how they're specking up, even to which robot they're prioritizing. Are you going to prioritize your hero XP versus your standard XP? And, you know, we'll see different teams how they go about it. But we're getting close to the end now. I think that was a pretty good explanation of the game overall. Isaac, I am so excited for this year, and I cannot wait. We've only got a month till competition.
Yeah, a month and a half. Yeah, it's coming up.
Crazy. So it's going to be a wild ride. Stay with us every week. We're going to be here on Saturdays all the way up till competition. Like I said, next week we will be interviewing teams, starting with our new team, Simon Fraser University, as well as one of our veteran teams, Purdue University. So be there for that interview. It's going to be crazy. I know that they're looking forward to it. Isaac, do you have anything else to say? Anything else to add before we say goodbye?
I'd just say, I will say one thing. We're looking for volunteers for the competition.
Yes. Yes.
And so please consider volunteering. There's information about that on the RoboMaster Discord. If you're not on the RoboMaster Discord, it's going to be on the official RoboMaster Colorado website very soon, as in a few days. That's just going to be rmcolorado.org. Just go to that website and there will be a link to sign up to volunteer. If you're interested in volunteering, it's an amazing experience. We have food every day for lunch. You get to meet a bunch of people. You get to work, you know, with people who are building crazy robots. You get to have a little bit of power over them, you know, if you're in inspection or as a referee. But it's a lot of fun overall. It's a great experience. And so I'd really recommend it. Please consider volunteering, because to be honest, we're very short on volunteers right now. We're very, very short, and I really need volunteers. So
volunteers make this competition happen. So if you are going to be in Colorado, or you can take some time and get to Colorado for this competition, we would love for you to volunteer, join our team, help make this event the biggest, best RMNA to date. Isaac, thank you so much for joining me and helping explain the rules. And everyone in the chat, thank you for suffering through some of our audio problems. I promise we will have these all worked out for next week. But until next time, I'm Steven, this is Isaac. We'll see y'all next time.
These are Prime subs.